King Jaehaerys reigned over nearly 60 years of peace and prosperity. But tragedy had claimed both his sons, leaving his succession in doubt. So, in the year 101, the old king called a great council to choose an heir. Over 1,000 lords made the journey to Harrenhal. 14 succession claims were heard, but only 2 were truly...
Hi, and welcome to The Boar and the Lion. House the Dragon has begun, and I hope you are enjoying our return to Westeros as much as I am. I already spotted a lot of differences between the book and the show, and over time I hope to discuss all of them with you. For now, let's focus on the beginning of the first episode. We start off in Harrenhal, seeing the outcome of the Great Council of 101 AC. We are told that there were 14 claims, and that in the end it came down to the claims of Rhaenys and Viserys Targaryen. Viserys is chosen as the heir to King Jaehaerys. The series immediately deviates from the book, where Rhaenys' claim was discarded prematurely on account that she was a woman. This change makes a lot of fans of House the Dragon miss some vital information about the Great Council, as it established an iron precedent for the future and it lays the groundwork for the central conflict that plays out in the series. To understand the events of House the Dragon better, we have to take a closer look at the years leading up to the Great Council and the overall reign of Viserys' predecessor, King Jaehaerys. So let's dive in. Our story begins with King Jaehaerys, known as the Wise and later as the Old King. Jaehaerys was the longest reigning Targaryen king, and he sat the Iron Throne for 55 years. He was married to his sister, Good Queen Alysanne. Jaehaerys inherited the 7 kingdoms after his uncle, Maegelle the Cruel, was found dead upon the Iron Throne. His reign was seen as one of the most prosperous and peaceful periods in the history of the 7 kingdoms, and House Targaryen and his dragons thrived. Before the king and queen had children, Aerea Targaryen, the eldest daughter of Jaehaerys' sister Rhaena, was his heir. Because of Maegelle's cruelty and the internal war that was fought before Jaehaerys' ascension, Jaehaerys was the last male Targaryen alive. That would soon change, however. Jaehaerys and Alysanne had 13 children together, so the succession was deemed secure for most of Jaehaerys' rule. Their first child was Aegon, who was named in honor of Aegon the Conqueror and Jaehaerys and Alysanne's brother, Aegon the Uncrowned. Aegon was born in 52 AC, and Jaehaerys finally had his own heir. It didn't last long. Aegon died at only 3 days old because he was born too early. Their second child was a daughter named Daenerys, born a year later in 53 AC. Daenerys was a delight to all who knew her and considered a great beauty. As the daughter of the king, Daenerys replaced her cousin Aerea as the heir to the Iron Throne. In 55 AC, a son was born to Jaehaerys and Alysanne, named Aemon. From the moment that Aemon was born, Jaehaerys considered Aemon his heir. Alysanne did not agree with this, and argued to Jaehaerys that Daenerys should be queen as she was the oldest. Jaehaerys answered that she would be, when she married Aemon when the children came of age. Alysanne was not happy with this answer, but Jaehaerys was firm in his choice, and the first clear precedent for agnatic primogeniture, meaning that the firstborn son goes first in the inheritance, was set. A woman could only inherit when there is no male available. Aemon would become Master of Laws for his father when he was an adult. Aemon also was a dragon rider who rode Caraxes, the bloodworm, who was ridden by Daemon in House the Dragon. 2 years later, a second son was born. Jaehaerys and Alysanne named him Baelon. Baelon was born 2 days after the beginning of spring, and therefore they named him the Spring Prince. Baelon became the second in line to inherit the Iron Throne, after his brother Aemon. Both princes grew up to be formidable fighters and honorable men, and Jaehaerys was considered to have an heir and a spare. Baelon eventually became the hand of the king at the end of his father's reign. Baelon also was a dragon rider, who rode Vhagar. During the harsh winter of 60 AC, a disease called the Shivers swept over the 7 kingdoms, affecting Westeros harshly. One day, Princess Daenerys came to her mother in the night, complaining about feeling cold. Everything that could be done was done for her, but she died 1.5 days later. Daenerys' death crushed her parents, and Alysanne even stopped attending council meetings for a time. 2 months after Daenerys' death, Alysanne discovered she was pregnant again. Late in 60 AC, she gave birth to a daughter, named Alyssa. Jaehaerys had always planned Daenerys and Aemon to marry when they came of age. He now considered his younger daughter Alyssa for Aemon. Queen Alysanne would not have it, however. as Alyssa was meant for Baelon. Alyssa was quick, strong and spirited. She would become a dragon rider later in life who rode Meleys, the Red Queen. In 62 HC a great feast was held to celebrate the official naming of Aemon as the Prince of Dragonstone. The title Prince of Dragonstone is the official title for the heir to the Iron Throne. Aemon was seated next to Jocelyn Baratheon at the feast, and the two children grew very close thereafter. Later in 62 AC, another daughter was born to Jaehaerys and Alysanne, named Maegelle. Maegelle was considered to be very bright and pious, and she had a gift for healing. The next years were very fruitful for the king and queen. In 63 AC, a son was born, named Vaegon. When Vaegon grew up, he spent almost all of his time in the library, and his only passion in life were books. A year later, in 64 AC, a daughter was born, named Daella. Daella grew up to be a sweet and gentle, but also shy and easily frightened. She could not be described as clever. Daella was originally meant as a bride for Vaegon, but the children disliked each other from the start. As they grew older, this dislike only grew, so the king and queen knew that they had to search for other matches for their children. Moving 3 years forward to 67 AC, another daughter was born, named Saera. Saera was just as quick, strong and spirited as her sister Alyssa, but she also was demanding and disobedient. Saera thrived upon attention and became ill-behaved when she did not receive any. Saera was the 9th child, however, so she often found herself ignored. As she grew older, she enjoyed getting the attention she craved from the men at court. In 68 AC, Aemon Targaryen and Jocelyn Baratheon were betrothed, and the couple married 2 years later in a lavish ceremony. In 71 AC, another daughter was born to Jaehaerys and Alysanne, named Viserra. Viserra was the most beautiful of Jaehaerys' daughters. Viserra grew up to be vain, and she delighted in playing boys against each other for her attention. From a young age, Viserra had the ambition to become queen. In 73 AC, Jaehaerys and Alysanne promised their daughter Maegelle to the faith, to eventually become a septa. Maegelle took her vows gladly. Alysanne announced that they did this as a thank you to the mother for gifting her with many children. Henceforth, Maegelle lived in Old Town, then still the capital of the Fated Seven. That same year, a son was born to Jaehaerys and Alysanne, named Gaemon. A few months later, in 74 AC, Gaemon died as he was born too early. That same year, the king and queen also became grandparents for the first time. A daughter was born to Aemon and Jocelyn, named Rhaenys. As her father was the Prince of Dragonstone and she was his firstborn child, many considered her as being next in line for the Iron Throne. In 75 AC, Baelon and Alyssa were married, and 2 years later, Jaehaerys and Alysanne became grandparents for the second time. A son was born to Baelon and Alyssa, named Viserys. That same year, a son was born to the king and queen, named Valerian. Valerian's birth left Queen Alysanne bedridden for half a year. Valerian wouldn't live long. A fortnight before his first birthday, in 78 AC, he died. That same year it became clear that Vaegon wasn't not just interested in his sister Daella, he wasn't interested in finding a bride at all. After consulting with the Grand Maester, Jaehaerys summoned Vaegon to his cellar and told him that he was to leave for Old Town within the fortnight, to study at the Citadel to become an Archmaester. In 80 AC, Daella married the elderly Roderick Arryn. Queen Alysanne gave birth for her 13th time to a daughter named Gael. Gael was a shy and sweet girl, but also simple-minded and frail. She was called the Winter Child, for the season of her birth and the fact that Queen Alysanne was in the winter of her childbearing years. A year later, a second son is born to Baelon and Alyssa, called Daemon. In 82 AC, Daella gives birth to a daughter, Emma. After a troubled labor, Daella died from childbed fever soon after. If we take a step back here, we can see that Jaehaerys' succession is firmly in place. At this moment, he has 2 full-grown sons who both have children of their own and many daughters who survived their childhood. Things would soon change, however. Let's head back to the timeline. In 84 AC, Baelon and Alyssa became parents for a 3rd time. Alyssa died while giving birth to their son Aegon, leaving Baelon heartbroken. Aegon would not long outlive his mother, dying 6 months after. That same year, a great scandal rocked the Red Keep. Jaehaerys' daughter Saera was found to have given her maidenhead to 3 of her male favorites. When confronted, she didn't show regret, and even suggested to marry all 3, as Maegelle the Cruel had done. Jaehaerys was outraged at the suggestion, and sent Saera to the Fate to become a septa, as punishment. Saera did not accept her father's judgment, however. She fled the mother house in Old Town a year later and found herself passage on a ship to the free city of Lys. There, she started working in a pleasure house, still clad as a novice of the faith. After this betrayal, Jaehaerys never wanted to hear his daughter's name again. As Viserra grew older, she had her eyes set on her brother Baelon, as she wanted to be queen. Queen Alyssa knew that Viserra wanted Baelon out of ambition, not out of love, and decided to marry her off to Theomore Manderly, the Lord of White Harbor. Viserra went to her father for help, but Jaehaerys agreed with Alysanne. As a last resort, Viserra snuck into Baelon's chamber and presented herself naked, but Baelon refused her. A year later, before being sent off to White Harbor, Viserra snuck out for one last night of laughter with her companions. Near midnight, the drunken group raced back to the Red Keep on horseback. Viserra's horse collided with one of her companions, and she was thrown into a wall and died, breaking her neck. There was some good news in these years as well, as Jaehaerys' granddaughter Rhaenys married Corlys Velaryon in 90 AC. Corlys was the master of ships and the lord of Driftmark, a powerful vessel of the Iron Throne. In 92 AC, the island of Tart was under attack by a group of exiles from Myr, one of the Free Cities. The Iron Throne sent the Velaryon fleet, Baratheon armies and Prince Aemon with his dragon Caraxes. Shortly after learning that his daughter Rhaenys was pregnant for the first time, Aemon flew ahead and met with Lord Cameron Tart at his camp on the island. The camp was discovered by two Myrish scouts. These Myrish scouts recognized Lord Cameron and tried to assassinate him with a crossbolt. The bolt missed Lord Cameron and hit Aemon in the throat, killing him. Baelon flew to Tart on Vhagar and burned all the Myrish ships in revenge. Upon his return to King's Landing, Jaehaerys named Baelon the new Prince of Dragonstone. The first signs for future conflict started to show here. Rhaenys objected to being passed over in the line of succession, along with her unborn son, and so did House Baratheon, her mother's house, and House Velaryon, her husband's house. Corlys even resigned as master of ships, out of anger. Later that year, Rhaenys' unborn son turned out to be a daughter, named Rhaena. Viserys married his cousin, Aemma Arryn, in 93 AC. In 94 AC, Rhaenys and Corlys finally got their son, and named him Laenor. Now having a male heir, Laenor's claim to the Iron Throne was immediately put forward, but Jaehaerys kept to the precedence of direct male inheritance, and Baelon remained the Prince of Dragonstone. In 96 AC, Maegelle died of grayscale after nursing children that were afflicted with the disease. A year later, Viserys and Aemma became parents of a daughter, who they named Rhaenyra. That same year, Daemon married Rhea Royce. In 99 AC, Gael disappeared from court, and the king and queen announced that she had died from summer fever. After their deaths, it became clear that Gael had been seduced and impregnated by a traveling singer. She gave birth to a stillborn son, and out of grief for her child, she walked into Blackwater Bay and drowned herself. That same year, Saera leaves Lys for the free city of Volantis, becoming the owner of her own pleasure house. A year later, in 100 AC, Queen Alysanne dies of old age, leaving Jaehaerys without his most trusted advisor and loving wife. More tragedy would come soon. In 101 AC, Baelon complained of a stitch in his side while hunting. The pain only worsened and Baelon died 5 days later in the Tower of the Hand. The Maesters wrote down the cause of his death as a burst belly, what we today would call appendicitis. Having outlived both of his heirs, Jaehaerys summoned his son Vaegon, now an Archmaester, to King's Landing. Some say Jaehaerys offered him the throne, which Vaegon refused on account of his vows. Vaegon suggested a great council to decide the succession. Supporters of Viserys Targaryen and Laenor Velaryon were both forming armies to press their claims. Out of fear of a civil war for his inheritance, Jaehaerys followed Vaegon's advice and convened a great council at Harrenhal in 101 AC. Lords, Maesters and the Faith would decide who the next Prince of Dragonstone would be. More than 1,000 lords and their retinues came to Harrenhal, and for a while the town of Harrenton was the 4th largest settlement of the realm. 14 claims were put before the council, 9 lesser and 5 greater. Of the 9 lesser claims, 3 are unknown to us. 3 of them were bastard sons of Jaehaerys' daughter Saera. Saera herself did not press her claim, stating that she had her own kingdom in Volantis. A nobleman who was a descendant of Aemon Targaryen by one of his younger daughters also presented his claim to the council. Aemon Targaryen was a distant ancestor of Jaehaerys. This nobleman was passed over because he was just a minor cousin, 9 generations removed from the main branch. 2 more bastards pressed their claims. One claimed to be the bastard of King Maegelle the Cruel, as Maegelle had raped his mother. The council believed the rape, but not that he was Maegelle's son, as Maegelle was assumed to be sterile and never produced a child during his life, despite the fact that he had 7 wives. Another man claimed to be the bastard son of Jaehaerys himself, but this was exposed to be a lie by Jaehaerys, and the man was seized and imprisoned. Which leaves us with the 5 greater claims. Vaegon chose not to press his claim, on account of his vows to the Citadel. Rhaenys and her daughter Rhaena were ruled out on account of their sex. This left the 2 claimants with the most support, Viserys Targaryen and Rhaena Velaryon. Viserys' claim derived from his father, Rhaeny's from his mother, and most lords felt that the male line must take precedence over the female. Besides that, Viserys was a man of 24, Rhaena a boy of 7. For these reasons, Rhaena's claim was considered to be the weaker one. The fact that it was not immediately discarded was because of his influential mother and the fact that his father was the most wealthy man in the 7 kingdoms. After arriving in Harrenhal, they used this influence and wealth to sway as many lords as possible to the cause of their son, but it was not near enough. Although the official numbers were never revealed, it was said that Viserys won the vote by more than 20-1. In the eyes of many, the Great Council of 101 AC established an Iron Precedent on matters of succession, regardless of seniority. The Iron Throne could not pass to a woman, nor through a woman to her male descendants. And that brings us to the very first scene of House of the Dragon. It always disappoints me when a television series deviates from the book, and especially when this literally happens in the first scene we see. What do you think about the change? And why do you think they did it? Please let me know in the comments. I just started making videos, so it would mean a lot if you could drop a like and subscribe to my channel. I want to thank everyone who watched, liked and reacted to my first video very much. I want to especially thank the people who already subscribed. I hope to see you very soon for the next one.
It is declared by all the lords paramount and lords vassal of the 7 kingdoms that Prince Viserys Targaryen be made Prince